And we're joined this morning by security expert Sal Lifrieri, the CEO of Protective Countermeasures, to give his insight into the growth of domestic terrorism. So good morning to you, Sal. Thanks for taking the time to chat with us this morning.
Good morning. Great to be back.
Okay, so we've learned a lot about the suspect's movements prior to the attack. That's from the FBI's press conference. So let's start with those 5 videos that were posted on Facebook as he was actually driving to New Orleans. So do you think that videos like that should have raised red flags right away?
You know, the problem that we have with situations like this, and we've seen this tactic and technique used in other attacks, is that the perpetrators posted just before they do the attack. Looking back at it now, 5 videos coming up in and of themselves would raise a red flag. But the problem that we have, and we go through this all the time when we utilize our TAG program, our threat assessment group program, is that we look at context and content and we try and figure out what is criminal, what is really an indicator of potential violence. And it's not always that clear. And with everyone having a First Amendment right to be able to post something, it's one of those things where this is something that should have been noticed before he takes off in the car and before he posts those videos.
All right, Sal, too, there are these coolers authorities say the suspect had placed around Bourbon Street before the attack. They were there for hours unattended with security, police all around. Is this a security lapse among many others that day, would you say?
Clearly, that's a security lapse. The public, we have video, and that's where the original 3 to 4 suspects came from, right? That there were additional suspects. There were people looking in the coolers and then walking away. They should have said something, see something, say something. Law enforcement's always instructed if you see backpacks, bags laying around to have their attention drawn to that. So there was lapses there. But the real lapse here, and the thing that I'm kind of wondering about, is with those devices, there were actual viable devices as described by law enforcement in there. Where did he get the technical capability to be able to put it together? You know, this is eerily reminiscent of Faisal Shahzad, who exceeded his technical capability, put a bomb together, but wasn't able to detonate it.
Yeah, you kind of wonder, like, if he's getting all of the elements to build this. Like you said, it should have raised red flags right away. I mean, inside his house, possibly. He rented a house in New Orleans. Do you know what investigators found there?
So apparently what's being reported, at least, is that that's where the devices were actually put together. And so, again, it takes you back to, his home in Houston had precursor. They had, the laptops, they had the cell phones, and that's probably where he was getting his education from. But then he had the precursor elements there, potentially brings it to New Orleans and puts it together in the home. And the other thing that's sort of, suspect here, or, raises a red flag, is right after the attack, there was a fire in that home. How did that occur? What had happened? So there are still a lot of questions that need to be asked.
All right, so at this point, the FBI says there's no link between the pickup truck used in New Orleans and that Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas, though both were rented from the same company, Toro. Now, with your expertise, would you say that is a coincidence or perhaps something more?
Sometimes in investigations like this, they just are coincidences, although we don't necessarily always believe in coincidence. But I think the indication here is that in both individuals, I think it goes more towards the mental state of where they were at as far as the planning. I think if they would have used their thought process, and again, a supposition on my part, but if they were thinking about using a traditional rental car company, they may have been under further scrutiny, and that may have caused a red flag, or them to believe it might be a red flag. So they decided to go through an app where they thought they may have been able to get a little bit more coverage and a little bit more protection from eventually committing the attack.
Yeah.
Should this put more pressure on companies like Toro because what we saw happen on January 1st?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to take a look at, what's the processes that they use to rent it. My understanding of the app is that what winds up happening is an individual can use his car to be rented, sort of like an Uber kind of a thing. So if that's the situation, if that's what they're doing, they may want to take a look at looking at who are the people that are renting and maybe have a little bit more control, although they may very well have it and I'm just not aware of it.
You know, we keep talking about all these red flags. I've seen videos of this suspect prior to this incident, and he seems like a normal guy. I mean, how were there not red flags that this guy was being radicalized?
Well, the people that know him best probably are sitting back now and saying, gee, you know, that stood out or that stood out. You know, there are things. Apparently, he was originally raised, if I understand correctly, he was raised as Christian and then at some point becomes radicalized and converts. You know, at some point, the people that know him best. But the problem is this happens over a prolonged period of time. So it's easy with 20/20 hindsight to look back and pick out those key indicators at that point over maybe a 2-3 year process. But, you know, the stressors that he had in life, the financial problems, the financial issues that he had could all be indicators of where he starts to change.
I want to ask you too, Sal, we got some big events coming up, the inauguration later this month, as well as the Super Bowl in February. How will these events, do you think, shape security for those events?
Well, you know, the presidential inauguration is a national security event that's driven by the U.S. Secret Service. And that's supported, that entire operation is supported by law enforcement personnel around the country. They send to support. I think after every type of event like this, no matter where it happens in the world, one of the things that we look at is what was the attack methodologies, what were the ways that they were successful, what were the ways that they were defeated. And I think the FBI, Secret Service, all the law enforcement agencies planning on those events will do just that. Look at those attack methodologies, figure that out, put it together, and then say, okay, here's our new plan. So it'll have an impact. I don't think it's going to change the plan radically, but it definitely will have.
All right, Sal Lifrieri, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Great to be here. Thank you.